Alternative, I'm William Cook. I am sitting down right now. It's Saturday night, July 23rd, to film up a video that I've been looking forward to filming up for quite some time now. My June album roundup. You might be thinking, William, don't you mean July? Since, yeah, it's the end of July pretty much at this point. But no, I still have yet to talk about any of the albums I've listened to from the month of June. I did a similar video to wrap up some albums from the end of April and throughout May. And this is a terrible way to get clicks. Unless you are already subscribed to my channel, I don't see this video popping up on the recommended feed for many people who have not heard of Wilternative. And this is a time-consuming video. I have got 22 albums and 7 EPs that I want to share my brief thoughts on from the month of June. Which, yeah, that's a lot to go over. This is something that would probably be better in podcast format. Maybe I should look into that in the future, but feel free to just to listen instead of watching, though I do have some visuals to share along the way as I share my track ratings. If you're new to this, yeah, I share my brief thoughts on each of the albums, and I will share give you a look at the track ratings for each of those albums. That's how I put together my ratings. I rate each of the songs on a 4-point scale, and that will determine what the overall album score is. And while this isn't a great format to grow my very small channel, this is massively cleansing for me to be able to get these albums off my chest and at least put out my brief thoughts on them. It's essential for me. This is more for me than for anyone else. But because of that, it also means a hell of a lot to me that you even clicked on this. So thank you so much for stopping on by. Hopefully you can take something out of this video. Let me know in the comments what you think of my thoughts. What you think of my thoughts. I am going to be breaking this down from the worst to the best. And I've even got 9 albums that I didn't even put together ratings for, but I just wanted to briefly mention. These are albums that are either just a bit out of my wheelhouse, not the type of music that I generally listen to, so it doesn't feel really fitting for me to even bother rating it, or it's just albums that I couldn't even bother putting together a rating for because they were just so meh. Let's start it off with the latest album from Xylo, Un-American Beauty. Now, Xylo is an artist that I would like to think is up my alley. Her Yes and No EP from 2019 has the song Ride or Die on it. And that song, Ride or Die, is one of the all-time greatest pop hits I've ever heard. It is an absolute banger, and I wanted to hear more of that sound from her. High energy, just a huge hit. But no, she's really just, I'm calling it kind of sad girl pop music. Real chill, stoner energy, and I find it to be a bit of a tedious listen. Though I do appreciate Xylo enough to give her a shout out here and say, hey, maybe you'll enjoy some of this stuff. And I don't hate it. I really don't hate it, but I was like, you know what? I'm not going to bother rating this album. Moving on, we have the band Secrets, The Collapse. Now, Secrets, yeah, totally out of my wheelhouse. I listen to a lot of metalcore, actually, but I don't like to talk about it too much on my channel. And Secrets, they're full-on screamo. But it is a good music to kind of let loose to, and there's something about their sound that brings me back. I was listening to them in the early mid-2000s, and there's a bit of a nostalgic feel with their stuff, and I do appreciate that. And it's a group of angry songs, lots of torment throughout. You got the clean hooks, but I don't love their clean vocalist, I guess, but at the end of it all, it's an album I'd recommend if you're into screamo music. Quick mention of The Range with the album Mercury. The Range, yeah, just so out of my wheelhouse. I'm not gonna bother trying to put together any ratings on these songs. It's electronic music. To put it vaguely, I guess, I hardly even know how to describe this stuff. Like I said, just not really in my wheelhouse, but The Range can come through with some absolute wonder, and that was shown to me on his album Potential from 2016 with the song Copper Wire. That song, go give that one a listen, because that is just mind-blowing what it does. I've had some very powerful listening experiences with that song, and it's enough to, you know, make me keep an eye on him. But this new album didn't quite bring me to that level of musical feeling. Then we have Perfume Genius, the latest album from Perfume Genius, Ugly Season. I love Perfume Genius. I've been with Perfume Genius since 2012's Put Your Back Into It. That album had more of an impact on me throughout the 2010s, my early 20s, than pretty much any other album. There is something special about that album that spoke to me in a pretty tough time in my life, and I'll always cherish it for that. And I've loved him ever since. But this new album, Ugly Season, I'm kind of looking at it as a side project in a way, even though it's under the name Perfume Genius. This music is largely instrumental based. We've heard him kind of touch on this type of sound within his other albums, but he's going all in on this stuff now. And I thought, hey, you know what? This could come through with some pretty intense feeling, because he can do that. But a few listens of it, and I just wasn't really wrapping my head around these songs. I believe he wrote most of these songs for a play of some sort. I could research it right now, but I didn't put any time into putting thoughts on this album. And if you want to look into it more, yeah, you can. But I just look at this album as a little side venture for Perfume, and I'm really hoping when he comes back with a new album, it's going back to him actually really giving us songs that he's singing and not just messing around with weird stuff like this. And when he can do some weird stuff really good, but I find this is more just kind of weird, and you know, it's respectable, but just not coming through the way that I know he can. JB Dunkel, the album Carbon, another electronic artist. He was from the group Air, one half of the duo Air, who you might be vaguely familiar with. I'm only vaguely familiar with them. I believe they're from the 90s, early 2000s. And again, just music that, hey, I'd recommend checking this guy out if you're looking for some pretty easygoing synthy electronic type of stuff, light vocals, very smooth and pleasant, but not an album you're gonna see me putting together a rating for. Then we have the artist Camp, Lavender Days. This is my first album with Camp. A friend got me onto him a couple of years back. His song By and By, a popular track and a great song. There might have been another one or two that I grabbed onto, but this new album is just a drag. He's a very tired singer, and I find it's a lot of pretty bummer type of folk music. There's a couple moments here and there that I'm like, oh yeah. The single Believe, Apple Tree Blues. I think notably Apple Tree Blues is a bit of a standout, but just not enough to make me give a shit. Speaking of boring folk music, Jack Johnson. The latest album from Jack Johnson, yet he's still around, Meet the Moonlight. I've never been a huge Jack Johnson fan, but I see that he put out this album. I'm like, oh, I'll check it out. But my God, it's just like the most laid back acoustic music you could think of. It really seems like he's just aiming for something completely chill as it can be. Hardly any movement to these songs from the few listens I had. I could hardly get through this stuff. It's just an absolute drag. Looking at the streams on Spotify, every song's got close to at least 500,000 streams, if not more. We got a few that have broken into the millions, and so it looks like he's still got his listeners. And I can see the album having its place. You know, you put this album on a nice sunny day when you're just lounging or whatever, but that's just not a lot of the type of music I listen to. And if I am lounging to music, you know, it just has to have a little bit more of a melodic strength to it. And I just wasn't finding much at all that pulled me in with these songs. The only time I ever really loved Jack Johnson was his 2013 album, From Here to Now to You. A really solid album, and it was the song Washing Dishes that is just phenomenal. That's my Jack Johnson recommendation right there. Next up, we have the artist Empress Of, the latest EP, Save Me. Empress Of, kind of alternative R&B, I guess you could say. She's got a good sound, but it's really, not the type of music I feel suited to really speak on. But I mostly wanted to mention it because of the single Dance for You. That's got some bump to it, some bounce, and good catch to that track. Their other 4 songs on here, though, made it pretty clear to me that it's just not really my sound. And lastly, of the albums I just could not bother putting a rating together for, Nova Twins, Supernova. Nova Twins, I caught on to them when they were featured on the song One by One from Bring Me the Horizon. I'm assuming that's how most people caught on to this female duo. This album, Supernova, I was thinking, hey, maybe it will be good, but no, oh no. It's rock music, in your face type of stuff, I guess, and it annoyed me. Yeah, looking at the tracks here, I don't think there was one song on this album that showed me any glimpse of potential. While they are within this sound that you'd think that I would be kind of into, I'm not digging it. Now that that's out of the way, let's get into it. The least favorite album for me from the month of June, Soccer Mummy. Her latest album, Sometimes Forever. I know Soccer Mummy has a pretty big fan base. I believe Pitchfork loves Soccer Mummy, and that's probably how I originally kind of got onto Soccer Mummy. I was seeing all this praise for her music when she started out several years back, but I've never been a fan. I've never been able to get into her stuff. You know, she's in the realm of artists like Phoebe Bridgers, Lucy Dacus, Julian Baker, I don't know, these indie singer-songwriters. And I find that whole genre is very hit and miss for me. I go to it because I know that these artists can really come through with some massive feeling. And when you listen to Soccer Mummy, you can hear the substance in her words, but she tires me. She's got a very soft, sad delivery, and man, I get so bored with these songs. Singles like Bones and Shotgun, they can keep me entertained with good hooks, but otherwise, they're still a little shy of really cutting into me. And I gave a 3 to the closer Still, which is, yeah, not really focused at all on a nice catchy chorus, but this is one that I can actually get a bit more of that feeling from. She talks about suicidal ideation, and it's this one moment on the album where I'm actually connecting with her words. Like I said, yeah, you can feel the substance in her words, but I just don't really connect with it. But the song still definitely touches me a bit more. Ultimately, though, yeah, she's just tiring. And while I can enjoy me some nice, sad, soft singer-songwriter stuff, she has always lacked in really speaking to me. I gave the album a 5.6. Next up, WEEZER, the second EP in their 4-part Seasons album. We got Summer, released on the first day of summer, June 21st. Each EP, if you haven't heard, it's named and styled after one of the 4 seasons. We had Spring in March, now Summer here in June. Spring, more breezy acoustics, while Summer, this one's more rock strong. And it's nothing awful. Originally, listening to this, I was like, oh yeah, I think I'm getting a bit more into these songs than I was with the Spring EP. But ultimately, Rivers Cuomo, the lead singer, I find he's always been a pretty chill frontman, you know? Never the most performative behind the mic. He just kind of has that Rivers Cuomo deadpan style in a way that works for WEEZER with a lot of their stuff. But at this point in their career, I just find he's a bit too stagnant. I really struggle to pull much of any excitement from him. And yeah, throughout these songs, while some easy melodies, I do find myself just feeling pretty bored. I remember with the Spring EP thinking, yeah, it feels like they could have written these songs all in one little studio session in one afternoon, and I'm getting a similar energy with this EP. Like, they're just not too concerned with making great music anymore. They're just trying to pump out release after release. These guys have been going at it for the past several years, and it's just been mediocre content. I gave Spring a rating of 6.4, and yeah, I was saying, oh, I thought maybe this was better, but nope. Ended up giving Summer a rating of 5.8. Now, next up, and I wish this wasn't so low down on the list, Alexisonfire, their new album, Otherness. Came out June 24th, and huge deal to have Alexisonfire back with the new album. If you're not familiar with Alexisonfire, the Canadian post-hardcore band released 4 rather successful albums in the 2000s, and I was a huge fan. But they have remained pretty quiet ever since. They released a few singles in 2019, 2020, Familiar Drugs, Complicit, Season of the Flood. I wasn't really into any of those. And they're back now with their first album in 13 years. And it very much has them leaving behind their sound from the 2000s, giving us a more sludge rock kind of sound is how I've decided to define it. Like, you get your heavy guitar, but it's kind of slow for the most part. Not much for sharp, punchy melodies. Like a lot of their older stuff, man. They had some massive hooks, and you're not getting much of that on this new album. The 3 singles, would you believe it? They're the best songs of the album. So guys, you chose the right ones for the singles, and Reverse the Curse, that is the undeniable standout of the album. Like, when you compare it to the rest of the songs on this album, you see a much more aggressive drive to its verses, and a chorus that can really hold its head high next to some of the big hooks from their earlier work. Also interesting to note, it's the shortest song of the album, aside from the pretty intense but melodically underwhelming Conditional Love. Like, a lot of these songs really drag things out. They hang around the 4 to 5 minute mark. And while some nice enough melodies, like Dallas Green still supplying some great cleans, Dallas Green is a huge part of Alexisonfire's sound, but I do find he is now sounding a little bit rougher around the edges, not really coming through with that sharpness in his delivery. And yeah, most of these songs just don't have the energy or the melodic pull to keep me coming back. Gets a rating of 5.9. So that's it for the releases that fell below the 6 mark. At this point, we're moving to the releases that are okay, but there's definitely the cracks in these albums that are holding them back. And that begins with the latest EP from Rise Against, Nowhere Generation 2. Actually, Rise Against is playing a show tonight here in Vancouver that I almost bought tickets for. The Used is opening for them along with Senses Fail, and I was like, oh, I'd go for those two bands, but I don't like Rise Against anymore. And it was like a $90 ticket after all the fees, and I just wasn't willing to pay that price to go see the Used play a pretty typical set. They always play the same stuff. Though I took a look at the set list, and it looks like it will be a fun one, that's for sure. But as for Rise Against with their newest EP, yeah, this EP follows their latest album, Nowhere Generation. And I kind of look at these songs, I guess, as a group of B-sides from an album that I wasn't really a big fan of to begin with. Looking at their last album, though, I did enjoy Sooner or Later, and the title track I do find is pretty anthemic. On this EP, I'd say Last Man Standing comes the closest to that anthemic quality. Like, they got some hooks. These songs are really not terrible, but this band doesn't interest me anymore. I gave the EP a rating a solid 6.0. Next up, we have Texas metalcore band MEMPHIS May Fire, Remade in Misery. The album came out June 3rd on Rise Records. And yeah, I mentioned earlier the band's secrets that I didn't want to bother putting together a rating for because, they're a metalcore band, not really in my wheelhouse. Yeah, I don't talk about too much metalcore, but a Rise Records band, they have my attention. And MEMPHIS, I've been listening to this band for several years now. While they've got the screams and whatnot, they're full of the hooks, full of the melodies, and I would consider them a band up my alley. Now, this is their 8th album. I've been with them since 2014's Unconditional. The slow song Speechless off of that album goes down as one of my favorite sing-along songs of all time. It was my number 14 song of 2014. Now, I know a lot of bands these days release a good handful of singles leading up to an album release, but the amount of singles that we got leading up to this album was a bit excessive. Like, we got the lead single Blood and Water almost 1 year to the day ahead of the album's release, back on June 4th of 2021. And over the next year, they'd go on to release 8 more singles before dropping the album, making 9 of the 11 songs pre-release singles. So basically, if you've been keeping up with the singles, there's not much left to hear on this album. And I was keeping up with the singles, and I remember thinking with each one, I was like, okay, moving on. As these guys, I find, just don't have much to offer outside of a pretty straightforward strategy with each of their songs, like the screams and then the clean hook. And while it's okay, it's just not much exciting. The opening track, the lead single from all the way last year, Blood and Water, that is the best song, no doubt about it. So if there's anything to hear off this album, it's that song. And really nothing terrible, but a lot of pretty whatever kind of stuff on this. I gave the album a 6.1. Next up, we have a new one for me, Alice Merton, S-I-D-E-S. I haven't done the research to find out exactly what that acronym stands for. Alice Merton, yeah, she came onto my radar, I guess, just this year. It's the sophomore album from the German-born English-Canadian singer-songwriter. You know what? I have heard of Alice Merton. She's most well known for her 2017 single, No Roots, which I definitely did hear back when it came out, but it just wasn't the type of song to convince me to dive into more of her stuff. But after, looking into her, it's interesting because she really does have no roots. She was born in Germany, moved to Connecticut when she was still a baby. Then the family moved to Ontario when she was still very young. Then they moved back to Germany when she was 13, and then she moved off to England after high school. So I thought that was an interesting little fact about her, the no roots connection there. As for her sound, yeah, it's a sound that I can vibe with. Pretty easygoing, alternative, pop-leaning music, but I do find it keeps things a little too easy on this, a little too plain. Nothing here really grabs me enough to even break into a 3.5 rating. But you got your handful of 3s, your 2.5s on here. A nice sound, but not coming through with the type of stuff that's really gonna make me believe in her music. But I'll keep an ear on her. Gave the album a rating of 6.5. Now we got another new one for me. The band Girlfriends, Motion Sickness. Came out June 17th. Modern pop punk duo from LA. It's their sophomore album. Now I'm seeing that it was released through the label Big Noise Music Group, which apparently the drummer Nick Gross is a co-owner of that label, whereas vocalist Travis Mills looks like he was releasing music as a solo artist before this project. Now this stuff, you can have some fun with it, but it is pretty shallow, I find. Typical songs of self-deprecation, mental health struggles, and I'm not taking much reward from these songs outside of the pretty catchy hooks. It is a sound that is very much up my alley though, and definitely shows me that I gotta keep an eye on them. And they come through the best with the title track. Actually, the final 3 songs are 3 of the best songs on the album. I love when a band can give you an album full of, you know, there's a whole bunch of 2s and 2.5s on here for me, but the final 3 are all solid as hell. And yeah, Motion Sickness, it comes through with the biggest drive, a rip you off your feet type of chorus that really cements it as my favorite. Gave the album a rating of 6.52. I always rate my albums to the second decimal, but I usually round it to the first decimal when I talk about it here. But when it comes to these little tiebreaker moments with Alice Merton at 6.5, this one just peaked ahead of it at 6.52. All right, we're creeping closer to that 7 rating, but not quite there yet. We got the latest album from Daywave, Past Life. Came out June 24th. If you're unfamiliar with Daywave, a California indie artist, Jackson Phillips is the name. This is his second full length following 2017's The Days We Had. He gave us the Crush EP in 2020. That held the song Starting Again. It went down as my number 37 song of 2020. And Daywave is a pretty special artist to me because of his debut single, Drag. In 2015, it went down as my #1 song of the year. That song is the perfect example of the best qualities of this type of music. You get the tight drums, the light guitar, very pleasant melody, and very dreamy, and that song will always remain an all-time favorite for me. Nothing from him since has hit me quite the same, but you can count on this guy for some very pleasant stuff, and once in a while he'll come through with some real emotional power. And on this album, he comes the closest to emotional bliss with the single Where Do You Go? I'm happy to see it has the most streams of the album on Spotify. Well deserved. It looks like it actually came out in 2021. It didn't really catch my ear too much back. I believe it came out in November of 2021, but it really grew on me with the album, and yeah, glad to see it's got the most streams. It's got the very snappy sing-along hook, and I love the little vocal additions he throws in throughout the song. These little things that you might miss if you're not paying close enough attention. Like heading into the second chorus at the end of the second verse, he throws in this little woo, and it's so cool. It really adds to the charm of the song. You know, the album is pretty tame, but it's nothing unexpected from Daywave, and I'd say if you love the best of his sound, then I think you're gonna be okay with the worst of it. And the worst of it being just stuff that's a little too placid, but ultimately there's that gentle mood throughout it that is easy enough to ride, and it does make for a pleasant listen, even if it can get a little boring. I gave the album a rating of 6.8. Okay, we're looking at the earliest release from June. This one came out June 1st. No Pressure, self-titled LP from the band No Pressure. It's their debut full-length album. This band is the Story So Far's Parker Cannon. I loved the Story So Far, and it looks like they might not be making any more music, and Parker's now focusing on this project. He's also teamed up with Pat Kennedy from Light Years and Harry Corrigan from the band Regulate. Both of those bands I've never heard of. Yeah, if you're a fan of the Story So Far, you've got to check out No Pressure. It's great to hear Parker again, but this stuff is a little bit heavier than the stuff from the Story So Far. At least a bit more punk abrasive. Like the Story So Far was very much a pop punk band, but these guys are much more aggressively punk. And when you look at the Story So Far, like my maybe my favorite song from them from their last album, Proper Dose, in 2018, Take Me As You Please. And that was like an acoustic backed slow song that is just absolutely gorgeous. Not going to hear anything like that on this album. It's hard hitting, fast paced, that chaotic driven punk energy that can be hard to fully grab onto, but the production is very clean. It doesn't come off too overbearing or grating on the ears. There's also a good flow between most of the songs, and I think Parker sounds great. He, as aggressive as it is and kind of rough around the edges type of stuff, he's got this kind of still that clean delivery to him that I really, really enjoy. But I would still love to hear more from The Story So Far in the future. If I had to choose between No Pressure or The Story So Far, I'm choosing The Story So Far. But they're still coming through with some good melodies on this One-Way Trip, being the most accessible song, I'd say, of the album. If there's one song to recommend, that would be the one. I gave the album a rating of 6.75, the exact same rating that the Daywave album got. Both are being rounded up to 6.8. Okay, we're creeping closer to that 7 rating, but we got a couple more albums that didn't quite make it, starting with Foals, Life Is Yours. The album came out June 17th. It's the 7th album from the British rock band. I've been with them since 2013's Holy Fire. I did go back to their first 2 albums before I caught them live in about 2016, I believe. They've been described as dance, punk, indie pop, some math rock tendencies, some pretty artsy stuff too, I'd say. And this album really leans into the dance side of their sound, giving us the grooviest set of songs we've heard from them yet. Now, the singles Wake Me Up, 2 AM, and 2001, those all slap. Super funky, lots of movement, wonderful percussion, tight hooks. Like, that's what I want. I heard those 3 singles coming into the album, and I was like, give it to me, guys. These are awesome songs. Fellow single Looking High, a little more breezy, not quite as tightly packaged, but still a good song. But I'll tell you, I am really struggling with the rest of these songs. They're loose, some psychedelic leanings, much less hook focused, and more just built to float away to. And while sure it makes for some easy listening, it's just not the type of stuff that's gonna really grip me in, which is very unfortunate. I was hoping for something better from these guys, but they did come through with some killer singles that I'll definitely be keeping in the rotation. And ultimately, I like the sound. I think the percussion throughout this album is a big noteworthy thing about it, and it's just nice to listen to what they're doing instrumentally here. But like I said, yeah, it still ain't really gripping me in with any big hooks, and that's, at the end of the day, that's what I want. I want the good hooks. I'm giving the album a rating of 6.9. Okay, the last album that did not get a rating of 7 or higher, VALLEYHEART, Heal My Head. VALLEYHEART is an emo alternative rock band from Massachusetts, and I've been with them for a good 4 or 5 years now, from about 2017. Their song Tick was my number 76 song of last year, and they made my top 50 of 2017 with their song Kids from Calvary. But what I've found with this band ever since getting into them is that, they come through with some really great stuff, but a lot of their other stuff just not really doing it for me, and that's pretty much the same kind of feeling I'm left with this album. This band, I made a note here, is the definition of potential not being met. Like, they have got a sound, man. Frontman Kevin Kline, gorgeous voice. Very light, gentle, full of apathy, the perfect emo singer in my opinion. But what I want to hear him and the rest of the band do is push things in a more aggressive direction. They're keeping things too soft throughout a lot of these songs when I really feel like they'd be better off going a bit harder. Tick from last year was a hard song. Kids from Calvary, big energy. They got some sweet melodies, but I just don't feel like they're pushing them to their fullest potential. I want more bite, more urgency, more drive. Like, a great example is the title track, Heal My Head. It is such a great melody, but they spend most of the song keeping it very subdued, and then they break open the song for the final stretch, and that's when I'm really feeling that melody come through. But it's a shame, because they give us one round of that final energetic stretch, and I just wish they would have given us more of that energy throughout the rest of the song. They do a great job with the single The Numbers, though it seems like with each album they're down to give us that rock energy with at least one song, and that one is the most outright rock song of the album. And then Vampire Smile, when it comes to their softer side, beautiful song. Really connecting with the feeling there. I love me some softer melodies, but I guess with their softer melodies, even though, yeah, I can feel the surface level emotion to it, they're not pulling me in much deeper. But Vampire Smile, that song can definitely hit the heartstrings. Gave the album a rating, the exact same rating as the Foals album, 6.88, rounding up to a 6.9. That's it. Every album from now on has at least got a rating of 7. I've gone through 11 so far that were below a 7. We've got 18 releases left that have hit at least a 7. 18, my God. Good thing I enjoy doing this, right? So next up we have Paul Caldwell, the album Headlines. You haven't heard of Paul Caldwell, I'm assuming. He is an Irish singer-songwriter, currently based out of the city I live in, Vancouver, BC. That's how I came on to him a couple of years ago. I came on to him with one of the songs off of this album. It's only 7 songs, but he's calling it an album, so I'll respect that. I mean, it is over 25 minutes, so yeah, it's an album. But yeah, I caught on to him with the song Headlines, and that song ended up going down as my number 53 song of 2020. It was written about the Oma bombing of 1998 in Northern Ireland, which killed 29 people, and 2 of those were kids that Paul knew. And I'll tell you, the song is heartbreaking and just wonderful. One of my favorites to sing along to, and a song I really, really would recommend anyone to listen to, spend some time with. It's heavy. It's emotional, it's not for every situation, but it's a brilliant song, and I think he did such a great thing with that track. Paul Caldwell, not really my type of music otherwise though, you know, lots of organ in the music, perky guitar, smooth bass, kind of folksy, bluesy even, I'd say. Not my go-to sound. But after hearing Headlines, I had to dive into this album. And he is an incredible vocalist. And, you know, in a song like Written All Over My Heart, there is some real swagger to that song. But it is more music that I can appreciate rather than really be like, yeah, this is my jam. I'll forever be grateful for Headlines, though. So please, man, give that song a go. Maybe try out the rest of it, because it's not all as emotionally heavy as Headlines. But that is the song where you're going to find the closest thing to perfection from this guy. Like that song, number 53 on my top 100. In retrospect, I feel like that it could have made it even higher. I don't know. The album gets a rating of 6.96. I'm rounding that up to a solid 7. Next up, we have George Ezra with Gold Rush Kid. Yeah, the latest album from George Ezra came out June 10th. British artist, 3rd album from this guy. I caught him live a few years ago, and man, he put on one of the best live shows I've ever seen. He talked, I believe, between every song of the set list, and usually I'm like, come on, get to the music, but this guy is a storyteller. His talking between the songs had me really gripped the whole time, and he has such a charm about him. Loved the set, and I've loved his music. This album, it gets there. It does stuff. You know, it broke the 7 barely. I'm going to be mentioning Vance Joy a bit later on in this album roundup. And I find it funny to note that he has a very similar release schedule to Vance Joy. And I'd put the 2 of them in the same kind of realm of music. Vance Joy is Australian, George Ezra from the UK, but they're both acoustic singer-songwriters. And I believe both of them released their 3rd album, and they both came out on June 10th. And I believe their first 2 albums both came out the same years as well. A little funny thing I noticed, thought I'd mention. But yeah, as for this new album from George, if you haven't been able to tell, I've been reading notes off my computer for all of these. I didn't write any notes for this one. I guess I just wanted to wing it. And yeah, it's pretty easy for me to sum up my thoughts on this one. I think it starts off pretty good. I saw him say something about how the first half is the bangers, his words, not mine, but the more upbeat songs, while the second half is more of the calm stuff. And yeah, while I do enjoy the singles Anyone for You and Green Green Grass, I still don't consider them some of his best. But they got the catch, man. Fell in Love at the End of the World has me going as well. He's got one of the greatest voices I know. Like this guy, I think maybe still in his 20s, and man, his voice sounds a lot older than his years, in a good way. Got a lot of power to it, but I do find these songs aren't exciting. I'm not I'm not that crazy about any of them. Oh, I didn't mention the rating, did I? It gets a rating of 7.1. Okay, next up we got to mention the latest EP from Our Last Night, Empire's Fall. Our Last Night, American post-hardcore hard rock band, a handful of albums and EPs from over the past 10-15 years. At this point, they're most well known for their covers on YouTube of very popular songs. I remember their song Home from their 2015 album Younger Dreams. That was a big deal for me back then. It didn't even make my top 100 though when I took a look at the listing. And it's got to be on my top 100 of 2015, but nope, looks like I did not add it to the list back then. And I've been pretty meh on them ever since. But this latest EP, a very respectable showing. Some good songs. Like, it's hard to pin exactly what holds these songs back from getting higher ratings from me, because they do hold a lot of the qualities that I like in my music. Big hooks, big breakdowns, good mix of screams and cleans. Production is always flawless with these guys. They've just always felt a little corny to me. I'm never fully able to immerse myself within the feeling of their music. But they hit it hard, they bring the hooks, man, and it's easy enough to enjoy these songs. I gave the album a rating of 7.14, just scraping a little bit past the George Ezra album. Though rounding it to 1 decimal, still a 7.1. All right, some more heavy stuff for us. Motionless in White, scoring the End of the World. Motionless in White from Pennsylvania, their 6th album. I've been following them since the 2012 sophomore album, Infamous. They're heavy but hooky, very accessible for the emo pop rock crowd that I came out of. Alternative Press magazine, where all these posters behind me came from. That was what introduced me to them back in the day. And if you're in alternative press, yeah, you're gonna be a band that I'm wanting to look into. And their frontman, Chris Motionless, has a very big presence about him, and that really helped draw me into them originally. His big goth look, very intimidating kind of look, and definitely made me want to be like, hey, what kind of music are these guys doing? And 6 albums in, this latest feels like their biggest one yet. They've been growing with each release from what I've seen. And this album, these songs feel like they were meant for arenas, for the stadiums, especially the single Masterpiece. A big epic song, and yeah, pretty much the most accessible song on this album, but still a bit shy of really being anything even great for me. I do find it's still a little, I don't know, kind of standard, but it's big, man. There's no doubt about it. I found the album to have some Ice Nine Kills similarities, some theatrical moments, some horror elements, bits of spoken word throughout, which, yeah, very much Ice Nine Kills. And really, one of the most solid releases of the month, man. Just 3s across the board. I could hardly find myself giving any song more than a 3, though. Slaughterhouse, that song, one of the most vicious on the album, and I think one of the best hooks. And Burned at Both Ends, number 2. I don't know what number 1 was, but number 2. Yeah, I think that might be my favorite of the album. They got a couple that didn't even make the 3, like Red, White, and Bloom with Caleb from Beartooth. Man, I was thinking the Beartooth feature, one of the best. The worst song of the album, easily. But yeah, they held pretty strong throughout this stuff. Still nothing really able to rip into me for a perfect 4 rating, unfortunately. But the album gets a rating of 7.2. Next up, we have a band that you may not have heard of, Astronoid, Radiant Bloom. Astronoid, very cool group from Lowell, Massachusetts. Their 3rd album, they're post-metal. They combine elements of black metal and shoegaze. Yeah, black metal, not my type of thing, but I came across these guys a few years ago, and I was really amazed with what they can do with their sound. Like, there's an awe-inspiring presence to their music at its best. And they've managed to take me to some pretty extreme heights of musical feeling with at least one song on each of their 3 albums. Their vocalist, Brett Boland, he has this light, high note delivery, comparable to the frontman of Danish alt-rock band Mew. If you haven't heard of Mew, go check out the song Water Slides. And yeah, it's those vocals that make this music digestible for a listener like myself. And while I do love these vocals, there's plenty of dreamy bliss to this stuff. I do find myself, I can easily get lost in these songs, not necessarily in a good way. Can be a bit too chaotic, drowning me in the guitar. The vocal melodies kind of slipping through my fingers. You know, with shoegaze, the vocals can kind of get drowned out a bit. That's part of shoegaze. And yeah, the vocals definitely can get a bit buried in the mix at times. But there's at least glimmers of beauty with each of the songs here. And with this album, they reach the height of perfection with Sleep Whisper. It ends up building to this truly spectacular moment, and it's a song like that from these guys that makes them so worth checking out. You'll thank me. I gave the album a rating of 7.22. The Motionless in White got 7.21. This one, 0.01 decimal point above that. All right, back to an EP here. We have, well, I've been calling this artist MNYS, MNYS, before the internet. Another new discovery for me. He's an emerging artist with Pure Noise Records, one of my favorite labels. Looks like MNYS, I'm still gonna call him MNYS, stands for My New York Summer. He's got a DIY background, not sure exactly how DIY this group of songs is though. And yeah, it's some sweet stuff, primarily acoustic backed, pretty stripped down performances, feels pretty up close and personal. And it does contain the type of heart on sleeve lyrics that I appreciate from emo artists like this. It can be a little dry. I do find some of these songs that are a little similar, like they don't stand apart too much. But we do have the single, Everything's Fine, the one song, if you're gonna check out this guy, Everything's Fine. What a track. It's short, kind of only gives you 2 run-throughs of it, but that final hit, man, it really delivers the feeling, and it's sure to stick close to me this year. The EP gets a rating of 7.25, rounding up to a 7.3. Okay, we're inching our way slowly through the 7s. Next up, we have I'd like to call him my friend. I've never met the guy in person, but we've been connected on the Instagram for what, 4 years now or so? DARREN Campbell. His new album, Ways We'll Never Know. DARREN Campbell is a Scottish singer-songwriter based in London, and I connected with him, back in, I believe, 2018 when I started posting little written reviews on my Instagram. He reached out to me, and I checked out his music, and I've been following the guy ever since. No bias included. I really enjoy DARREN's music. Now, DARREN, he's not a full-time touring musician. He composes music for commercials, I do believe. So, I mean, he's a professional artist, but he's not out on the road doing this for a living. But he has been releasing singles pretty steadily throughout the past several years. And look at this, he's given us a full album. I swear, just last year, I asked him, hey, DARREN, you're gonna be putting out an album? And he said, no, just sticking to the singles. And I was like, yeah, good approach, man. Just keep yourself relevant and keeping the singles coming. I like it. But boom, we got all of a sudden, pretty surprise release here in June with 10 tracks. With 10 new songs all together on an album. None were released as singles as far as I'm aware. DARREN makes for some really sweet listening. He's got such a friendly voice. Like I said, no bias. I'm not afraid to share some critique of DARREN. He's not the greatest singer in the world. He's got a good voice, DARREN. You got a good voice. You're a fine singer. Totally holds up. But I can imagine people listening and being like, I'm just not really into this guy's kind of, nasally a little bit. He doesn't have the most full of sounds with his vocals, but it's very friendly and it's super easy listening, man. And at the end of it all, I think he is just a very good songwriter. Ooh. Wow. And I can always depend on him for some real reward in his songs. And we get the biggest reward on this album with the song Hands. It's a slow build of a track, and you can really get a taste of his production talents, and it builds towards the end to this fantastic lift of feeling that like I said, man, the reward within it is so nice, and gives me that gut punch to get that perfect 4. And a lot of other solid stuff on here. The opener there is good, has a lot of energy to it. Really like what he does with that song. Doesn't all have me going wild, but some really nice acoustic singer-songwriter stuff here. And I'd love it if you went and gave our boy DARREN Campbell a listen. The album gets the exact same rating as the Money's EP, 7.25, rounding up to 7.3. Okay, we're bringing things back to my home country of Canada with this one, Purity Ring, Graves. This is the latest EP from this Edmonton electropop group. It's my first release with them, though I've been aware of the band. I believe I got a good friend who's mentioned them a couple of times in the past. Thanks, Gavin. Purity Ring, very pretty stuff. You got some atmospheric keys and synths, pretty spacious. Their vocalist, Megan James, has a sweet, kind of kiddish delivery on these songs. Nothing ripping into that perfect 4 territory, but the opener and title track, Graves, has some real feeling to it. They got these really nice keys to it that really set the mood, and that's the one I'd recommend the most. The following, Never End, is has a bit more grit to it, I find. And that's another great track. The EP's rating just inches above the last two here, 7.29, rounding up again to 7.3. Okay, at this point, we've made it to my top 10 releases of the month. And funnily enough, we hit this top 10 hitting the 7.5 mark. An album that can hit that 7.5, yeah, that's a pretty strong album. And we're kicking that off with album number 10 of the month, Lit, Tastes Like Gold. Now, Lit, I've never heard of this band until this album, but they've been around for a while. They're the band behind the late 90s hit single, My Own Worst Enemy. Kind of a one-hit wonder, you could say. And it looks like they haven't been doing too much throughout, you know, the 2000s and the 2010s, but they've been around here and there, I guess. But this is my first album with them, Tastes Like Gold, and they're doing good. They're doing real good. But I will say these songs, they're not here to really make a big message. There's not too much substance to this music, but there's some real fun to be had on some of these songs. Mouth Shut and Kicked Off the Plane both got the perfect 4 for me. Freaking awesome songs, man. So much fun. Big hooks, big sing-alongs. They have that kind of shouting energy to their hooks. That's how they like to do the hook. Listen to both Mouth Shut and Kicked Off the Plane. They're both shouting hooks, but I love it, love it. Do It Again, The Life That I Got, Get Out of My Song, some other really catchy songs on this album. Those awesome songs do make up for the fact that a large chunk of this album is a bit more mediocre, but they sure have some fun to be had on this album, and it's enough to get it a solid 7.5. All right, my number 9 album of the month, Thornhill, Heroin. This band from Melbourne, Australia. Their sophomore album, I'd classify them as alternative metal, Deftones inspired. I discovered them just a few months back, opening up at a show here in Vancouver, Dayseeker headlining with Holding Absence and Caskets and Thornhill. And Holding Absence was the only reason I was going to that show, but I checked out all the other bands going into the show, and Thornhill was my least favorite discovery, the one that was the most out of my range of music tastes. But at the show, I'd say they maybe put on the best performance of the night. Really impressed me. Their frontman, Jacob Charlton, has a real performative nature about him that doesn't just shine through in the live setting. It also really comes through in the studio recordings here as well. Like, for example, he gives us this before the chorus of Casanova and the ooh in Raw. Those little additions are wonderful. I love that he gives us that. It's like he's just kind of vibing behind the mic and like, hey, it feels good to throw in a little ooh here or there. And you don't hear too many artists do that. And I think it really adds to these songs. The peak of feeling on this album, though, is hit with Hollywood in its final stretch. It's one of the more slow burning tracks of the album, but yeah, at its final bit there, it breaks open for some immense feeling. You'll notice, though, I only gave it a 3.5 because it doesn't have me gripped throughout, unfortunately, and you need to have me more pulled in throughout to get that perfect 4. But still an awesome song, along with Raw and Casanova and Archangel, and then the Hellfire Club. Is that a Stranger Things reference? Whatever the case, really another very powerful track there. So I'm really liking a good chunk of what they've given us here. Some of it a little too overbearing for me, doesn't really come through with the sharp hooks that I'm looking for, but a very promising showing from these guys here. Album gets a solid 7.5. Now we're moving past the 7.5 with my number 8 album of the month. That would be Muna with their self-titled, what is this, their third album, the American pop trio They have given me some of my favorite songs over the past several years. Little breakdown here. So Special was my number 27 song of 2017. That's off their debut album. Their 2019 sophomore album, Saves the World, gave me my number 16 song of the year with number 1 Fan, such a bop, along with my number 5 song of 2019 with Stay Away, which I'd say is the greatest breakup song I've ever heard. I was coming out of a breakup in 2019, and holy hell, Stay Away spoke to me unlike anything else. And then in 2020, they teamed up with the electronic duo The Knocks, who I had never heard of until they teamed up with Muna. That was for the song Bodies, and 2020, that was in the thick of the pandemic, COVID times, and this song was really an absolute anthem for those isolated times we found ourselves in. It went down as my number 1 song of the year. And then just last year, back in September, we got the lead single for this album with Silk Chiffon, and that ended up making it onto my top 100 of 2021, landed at number 36. So 4 of the last 5 years, they've landed on my top 100, and I don't think there's any other artist I can say that about. So that's a huge deal for Muna, man. They've been massive for me for the past several years. And so I was very excited coming into this new album, especially with the amazing singles we got leading up to it. So we got Silk Chiffon back last year, which I did not even think was going to be part of this album, but yeah, they opened it up with that. No complaints from me. And then we have, let's see here, we had the amazing single Anything But Me. Check out the music video for that. Fabulously done. They released Home By Now, which is a great song. I just couldn't quite give it the perfect 4 rating, but there was no doubt that Kind of Girl was going to get a perfect 4 from me. Maybe my favorite sing-along so far of 2022. A brilliant acoustic showing from them, more folk-leaning. They do a one-take music video for it. Again, you gotta check out the video, and they're all dressed up as men. It is wonderful. And upon the album's release, they put out the latest single with another fun video, What I Want, and it's just another pop banger, man. That song, they just let it all out, and it's so much fun. So with the singles for this album, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 singles that are almost all of them 4s. Just the one 3.5 with Home By Now. And we have 6 other songs to look forward to. They all let me down. They all let me down, man. Crazy that all the singles are 4s and 3.5s. The other 6 couldn't even touch a 3. It's ridiculous to see a band pump out these amazing singles and then just fill up the rest of the album with this stuff that's just not that good. It's not that good, Muna. Not that good. They're under the label with Phoebe Bridgers, Saddest Factory Records. They used to be with RCA Records, but it looks like, no, they're on Saddest Factory Records now, the Phoebe Bridgers label. And yeah, you definitely, I mean, they feature her on Silk Chiffon, which is amazing, her feature. But on the song Loose Garment, towards the end, that song screams Phoebe Bridgers' influence. And I was like, yeah, I see what you're doing, but man, they just don't come through with anything that really makes me care that much about it. And that I can say that about pretty much any of the other 5 deep cuts of the album. Real shame, because this could have been one of the best albums of the year, but they really dropped the ball with these deep cuts. Ends up getting a rating of 7.6. Now next up, James Vincent McMorrow, The Less I Knew. James Vincent McMorrow, I believe he's, from Ireland? Singer-songwriter guy, and I appreciate this guy. He, put a thing on his Instagram saying he's stepping away from the social media. He doesn't want to get involved in the whole album release stuff. Said it's kind of negatively impacted his mental health in the past, and he's kind of leaving it up to his team to deal with all that stuff and taking a step back as he quietly releases this album. But James is a guy you don't want to miss. He's got an amazing voice. It's very light and delicate in a way, but he's also got some real oomph within his deliveries, and he knows how to hit a good hook, as is shown on Hurricane, Steven, The Less I Knew, Heads Look Like Drums. These songs come through with that melodic reward that just keeps me really interested. And the feelings there, man, he's always got the feeling. The Less I Knew, the title track, notably, it's got some emotion to it, more sentimental than these other ones I mentioned. But he's playful. I like his playful side as well, which is shown on Heads Look Like Drums. It's only an 8-song album. The final 2 are kind of whatever for me, but the first 6 are they all hold strong, and it's another great showing from our boy James Vincent McMorrow. No perfect 4s, but I'm very pleased. He gets a rating of 7.7. Okay, we're getting there. Magnolia Park Heart Eater, the latest EP from this group. They're from Orlando, Florida. They've been releasing a slew of singles over the past few years. I never caught on to them until, I guess, just this year, though, I think. It looks like they did release an album last year, which I did not catch any wind of. Some EPs along the way. They're modern pop punk on Epitaph Records, which is a pretty big deal. And yeah, it's just a 4-song EP. They absolutely kill it with the opening track, Feel Something. It features Derek Sanders from Mayday Parade. This is the must-hear of the album. Derek's verse, notably, is so good. I'm not too crazy about Gravedigger or Sirius. I think they're pretty good, but I just don't find them that exciting. A little brash, obnoxious even, and just kind of plain. But then Tokyo, the closing song, it's interesting to note that 3 of these 4 songs have features. We get Christo Bowman, is that how you say his last name? From the alt-pop band Bad Sons on Tokyo. It's a synthy, drum and bass kind of dancer Tokyo, a bit different than the other 3 songs. You know, I noted that it kind of sounds like it almost could have come from The Weeknd. Like, I could see The Weeknd singing this song. So they've definitely got my attention, and if you're keeping an eye on the modern pop punk scene, you've got to be listening to Magnolia Park. EP gets a rating of 7.8. All right, we've made it to my top 5 releases of the month. 4 albums and 1 EP is what we got left. And it's going to start off with the latest from Judah and the Lion, Revival. Judah and the Lion from Nashville, folk pop, bluegrass type of music. This is their 4th album, and it's much less pop-centric than their 2019 album, Pep Talks. That's when I really jumped on board Judah and the Lion. I knew of them before. I believe I listened to their earlier stuff, but I wasn't at all too interested until Pep Talks came out. That album, one of the best albums from 2019. I love what they did with that album. A great showing of this mix of folk, bluegrass meets pop music. Big hooks, big melodies, but with that kind of banjo, bluegrassy kind of energy to it. And man, they came through so good on that album. Now this new one, it is, yeah, like I said, much less pop-centric. They're really stripping things down, really taking a much more sentimental approach to these songs. And you know, I was talking about Muna not too long ago, a similar kind of thing here with some amazing singles leading up to this album. Happy Life is an absolute stunner. The chorus is just such a mood, such a mood. The fellow single Scream, a little more abrasive, got some kind of anger to unleash on this song. I'd say this is where things get the loudest on the album. Great message to it, and yeah, still coming through with that to it. But it is Take a Walk that goes down as one of their best that they've ever done. Take a Walk is stunning, stunning. And you can depend on this one landing on my top 100 of the year. The whole presence of this song, the message, the mood, what's the word? The melancholy. It hits the spot, man, and they nail it so good. I adore the song. And yeah, it's just unlike really much of what we heard on their last album, really diving into the feels and the more emotional approach and less pop-driven approach. But damn, do they ever make it work into just one of the most incredibly uplifting musical moments of the year. The one thing I have to note about this song, it's so good in a song like this, the outro, the ending, it's like, how are you going to wrap that up in a good way? And I find it comes to an end a little suddenly for me. Every time it's just like, oh, and the mood is so incredible throughout that when it ends, I do find it's kind of like having the rug pulled out from under me. And it does feel like the wind is taken out of my sails a bit. So it's weird. It's tough. And I wish they would have kind of wrapped it up a little bit more smoothly. That's the only complaint against the song. Now, the thing is with this album, there's some kind of not that great stuff Outside of those singles, you know, Blue Eyes is an emotional song, I believe, about his grandfather who passed away. But there's not much else on here that really is getting me that excited, which is it's a shame. They do a cover of Landslide by Fleetwood Mac, and I'm like, why? Why do you do that? I mean, it's fine, I guess. It just seems like unnecessary. I don't know. But yeah, the album's gonna get a rating of 7.9. Okay, the top 4, and we're moving into the 8s. And it kicks off with the latest EP from HAZEL English, Summer Nights. It's a 5-song EP from this Australian artist. She's based in California, I do believe. I mentioned Daywave earlier. HAZEL English, I consider her like the female version of Daywave. Very similar sounds, indie pop, dream pop. Her 2017 single, Never Going Home, is fabulous. Yeah, give that song a go to see what I'm talking about when it comes to just how damn good this sound can be. You know, she can create some breathtaking moods with the gentle guitar and some tight and light drum work. Her soft vocals have a bit of a timidness to them, and it's just part of her charm, similar to Daywave in a way. You'll never hear her really pushing her vocals too much, just kind of riding the mood of each song. And we get a bit of that breathtaking quality on this EP. I'm so glad that she was able to really do that for me with the opening track, 9 Stories, a perfect 4. Just has that nice snappy little verse and then takes the drums away as it leads into this open-armed chorus that really breathtaking, man. That's where the breath is taken away, and it's quite beautiful. Ultimately, the 5 songs here, they all got something to them. 9 Stories is the big recommendation, but you can see it kind of declines as the EP goes. But Summer Nights, the title track, another very worthy song. Love me some HAZEL English. Always good for these summer days, man. Or summer nights, I guess you could say. I swear I didn't write that down. That just came to me. EP gets a final rating of a solid 8.0. All right, we've made it to the final 3. I'm tired. I've been filming for over 2 hours now. What am I doing with my life? But the number 3 album of the month, this is the one I wrote the most about when it comes to my notes. If you've been paying attention and watching this, bless you. You are amazing. But I'm probably speaking to no one right now. But if I am speaking to someone, if someone's actually listening to this here, wow, thanks. And you may have noticed if you have been watching this, yeah, I'm watching, I'm looking at my computer here. Maybe this would be better as a podcast, because really, I've got some notes. Yeah, I wrote down some stuff that I wanted to say about these bands. And yeah, I want to look at you while I'm talking, but save myself from having to memorize all the stuff I wrote down. So it just makes it a bit easier to look at the things. So hopefully it doesn't take away from the experience, the interaction with me too much. But I'm gonna try and read most of this just off the screen, because yeah, I wrote down a good bit about the latest album from the Rex, Sonder. Now the Rex, they're a Los Angeles band. This is their sophomore full length. They burst onto my radar and the radar of many others with their 2016 debut single, Favorite Liar. You remember that song? Great song, a very rambunctious sound, playful, energetic rock, even a bit classic rock leaning on their debut EP. So it wasn't really my type of thing. I liked Favorite Liar a lot, but I remember being like, these guys are a bit much. A bit silly in a way. Now their second EP delivered the decently popular single, James Dean, another rock-strong song with a heavy-handed, catchy hook. And then they brought in a little more pop to the rock with their 2020 8-song album, Infinitely Ordinary. I found some major group love energy on the song Freaking Out, and Fuck Somebody is definitely one of their catchiest songs. It's the second most, has the second most streams next to Favorite Liar on Spotify. Then they followed that album shortly after with the Static EP, continuing to evolve their sound, showing a more funky pop sound on the title track. The vocalist even showing some Adam Levine similarities. And we do get some more Maroon 5 energy on this new album with the lead single and the closing track, Lone Survivor. It's the biggest pop song of the album. Got a great walking pace to it, put some swagger in my step. And I really do like that song, but I'm happy to see that that's not the energy that we're getting throughout the full album. I'd say that this is their best group of songs yet, and it has them taking on a bit more of a mature alternative rock sound. And yeah, still plenty of pop influence throughout. Dystopia has this funky riff to it that makes me think of Tame Impala's The Less I Know the Better. Give it a listen and let me know what you think. They get kind of playful with the acoustic-backed Ugly side, but it's very earnest and sweet. Definitely one of the better songs. And they have given me the absolute best that I've heard from them yet with the two singles, I Love This Part and Sonder, the title track. I remember I Love This Part. It came before Sonder as a single, and it was the first song, because I had heard Lone Survivor, but I remember I guess I kind of moved on past that one without really thinking too much about it. But when I heard I Love This Part, I was like, wow, I haven't heard anything like this from the Rex. I couldn't believe it was the Rex. A dark energy, an explosive hook, moody performance from their frontman, unlike really, any type of mood I've heard him give us. He even breaks out a couple of short screams in the bridge. And the hook, man, when it hits, it comes through so nice. But then when I heard Sonder, this one takes the cake as the best song that the Rex have released yet. It's got more of a straight up alt rock drive, and it leads up to easily one of the catchiest hooks I've heard this year. And they do something great with the pre-chorus that they bring in heading into the second chorus. They bring that pre-chorus back in the bridge to build it into this incredible rise of feeling that is just the cherry on top of this wonderful song. So yeah, my favorite group of songs yet from the Rex. I really want to hear them pushing more of this sound in the future. Gets a rating of 8.2. Okay, the top 2 albums of the month. And if you've been watching, which you haven't been watching all of this, come on, give me a break. But I mentioned earlier when I was talking about George Ezra, I mentioned Vance Joy. It was coming up on this list as well, and here he is, my number 2 album of the month, Vance Joy, In Our Own Sweet Time. Now, Vance Joy, Australian, 3rd album from this guy, and I just love Vance Joy. He is so good at crafting a song. Like, if all you know Vance Joy for is his big hit single Riptide from way back when, 2014, do yourself a favor and dig into his albums. He is much more than just some radio-friendly folk artist. He's got some real depth to his music, and can get me feeling ways that not a lot of artists can. Now, the thing of note for this album, side A versus side B. The first half of this album is stacked. I mean, we got songs like Solid Ground and Catalonia that are good, whatever, but the opener Don't Fade is a great single. Missing Piece is fabulous. It's like a love song that makes me want to fall in love. And I love music like that. Way That I'm Going has tons of feel into it. One of the softer songs on here. Same with Every Side of You. Both of those tracks are just fantastic showings of his softer side. And then Clarity, another pre-album single. Very upbeat, very catchy. Maybe the stickiest hook of the album. And I guess you could call Clarity part of side B, but it's really once we hit the final 5 here that things just get a bit more meh. Good songs with Wavelength and Boardwalk, but they don't really have the replay value for me like some of these other stuff. So yeah, Vance Joy, you know, he's not always stunning for me, but I'm so amazed that he was able to give me not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 perfect 4s on this album. That is a feat right there. I mean, Muna did the same thing, 4 perfect 4s on their album as well, but he's able to remain more solid, man. The album gets a rating of 8.23, rounding to 1 decimal point at 8.2, which would be the same as the Rex album, but that was an 8.18, so it just inches above it. Now, my number 1 album of the month. I gotta give it to Coheed and Cambria, Vaxis 2, A Window of the Waking Mind. Coheed and Cambria, New York, prog rock. This is their, 10th album. I've been with them since 2013's The Afterman Dissension, which I might just have to call the greatest rock album I've ever heard. Yeah, it was my introduction to the band, and just 9 songs, but pretty much flawless, and just a brilliant showing from Coheed. Pulled me in with their intricate displays of musicianship and just kind of, progressive leaning style. But Claudio Sanchez, the vocals on this guy, he is no doubt one of the greatest vocalists of today, and he knows how to push a hook to its fullest potential, and that Afterman Ascension album is just one incredible song after another. Now, the last time we really heard from them was with 2018's The Unheavenly Creatures, Vaxis 1. The title track was my number 24 song of the year. That's a good showing of really, just how far they can push a melody, that song. And this new album is packed with big anthemic hooks, like maybe some of their most pop-oriented stuff yet. And I'm loving it. I'm all here for it. I'm not here for the big progressive rock kind of stuff. And I know a lot of fans, that's what they're looking for from these guys. But I'm coming to Coheed for some big sing-alongs, and Claudio has me singing along throughout most of this album. Just look at the track ratings here. Beautiful Losers is an incredible open to the album. You got the singles Comatose and Shoulders, awesome songs. A Disappearing Act is a big standout. Love the frenzied pace of the chorus. Has a bit of a synth wave, dark wave kind of vibe to it. The Liars Club, another pre-album single, not originally a song that I would see myself giving a perfect 4 to, but diving into the album, man, the that hook is just flies, and I just can't help but really get pulled into it every time and just belt along with it. And it's such a fun ride that I was like, yeah, this is a perfect 4. Bad Man has a great dark energy to it. Another really, really cool song. And then Rise Nyanasha, Cut the Cord. That was one of the earliest singles from the album. And the other perfect 4 here. Another stunning sing-along, man. These guys just know how to get me singing along with these massive choruses. The 2 songs where they do push more into the prog territory, Ladders of Supremacy and the closing Window of the Waking Mind. Yeah, definitely the 2 here that aren't going to be pulling me back too much, though they are respectable tracks. You know, when they're not pulling me in with the big hooks, I'm still at least impressed with the musicianship and the overall performance. These guys are absolutely fabulous, and I'm stoked to have them as my favorite album from the month of June. It's gonna get a rating of 8.5. Wow, we did it. This is ridiculous. I'm a madman. I've been filming for what, like 3 hours? But it's been fun, been great for me to get all these albums off my chest. And even better, if you could take anything from this. If you're here watching the outro right now, well then do me a favor, leave a comment. Let me know if any of these albums piqued your interest. Let me know if you listened to any of these. Let me know if you disagree with my thoughts. Maybe there's some albums from June that I missed. I mean, there's a lot of albums from June I missed, but if you keep an eye on me, you know I like to keep to my niche for the most part. But yeah, there you have it, the 22 albums and the 7 EPs that made up my month of June. Thank you so much for checking this out. Love a thumbs up if you like what you saw. Hit the subscribe for more alternative content, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Love to chat. I'll see you next time.